Okay, it's just gone 12 o'clock. There may be a few people who'll dribble in at the end, but we'll get started on this, and then we'll give it the full time that it's allocated, which is about an hour and 15 minutes. If it finishes a bit early, we'll finish early. If it's really exciting and you keep asking lots of questions, then we'll go over, and you might lose 5 minutes in your lunch break. But I'm delighted that I wasn't the facilitator for this presentation until about 2 seconds ago, when Paul Bishop had some other things to do and asked if I'd do it since he saw me sitting here. And he bought me a beer last night. And,
you have to.
You know, there's no such thing as a free beer, I discovered. But I'm delighted to actually be asked to facilitate this, because it's something that's particularly special to me, in that it's making sail training accessible, and it's really Jubilee Sailing Trust in UK, which has got 2 square rig ships, Lord Nelson Tenacious, which are specifically designed to take able-bodied and disabled people sailing together. And the 2 speakers there are both extremely good chums of mine. I'll kick off with Robbie. Robbie has worked in disabled sailing a long time in Scotland, and now down with Jubilee Sailing Trust. He's severely physically...
There's a lot of issues.
Yeah. Anyway, he doesn't see very well, but so he's got lots of devices to help him. But it hasn't affected him any other way, because don't get too involved with him near the bar. But Robbie is a great guy. He has done a huge amount to encouraging other disabled folks, and particularly visually impaired folks. And he has a particular appointment with visually impaired folks. And he's going to kick off the presentation in a moment. And Captain Darren Naggs, well, I used to know Captain Darren Naggs when he was a trainee. And he is one of the guys who I love in sail training, to see a guy who's come through from trainee to boatswain's mate to boatswain, taking his tickets, come up through mate. I sailed with him when he was mate, first time on the maiden voyage of Stavros Niarchos, when I was navigator. And he treated me very badly.
Fully deserved.
And then last year, actually, we sailed together on Lord Nelson when Lord Nelson was racing against Tenacious, and Darren was captain of Lord Nelson. Lord Nelson is basically a bathtub with masts. Tenacious is a clipper ship. So Tenacious, on an A to B race, should outperform Lord Nelson every day of the week. Well, we beat them. And we were in a very close quarter race in strong winds, close hauled, sailing very close together at fast speeds, up to 12 knots, which is fast for those ships. And we were in the lead, and Darren was luffing up Tenacious. I was the race director as well as no, I wasn't watch leader, I was race director, I was only on there. And I didn't tell him that was actually against the rules. But we won. Anyway, so I'm delighted that I've got 2 chums here. Sorry?
It didn't cost me any money, I don't think.
It didn't cost you any money, no. We had some good discussions about it. But anyway, we've got this great presentation now. I'm going to let Robbie kick off with it, and we'll see how it goes. There'll be some questions during and after, and I think they're going to keep you pretty well entertained. Thank you.
So, I'm not going to use a microphone. Can you all hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Excellent. Now, whether you can hear me is one thing. If you can understand me, that's another. Scottish accent. I was at a conference in May in Geneva, and I think that was the first time they had to get a translator to translate English into English. So please just bear with me. So, who are the Jubilee Sailing Trust? Jubilee Sailing Trust are a social inclusion and sail training charity based in Southampton. We have 2 ships, Lord Nelson and Tenacious, and they were both built to take people who are physically disabled to sea. Now, I don't always introduce us straight away as a sail training charity, because our sail training and what we do is very different. Sail training typically involves taking young people between the ages of 12 and 25 away to sea to learn about themselves and to learn about teamwork and leadership. I don't need to preach that to this room. We do that, but we are not restricted to young people. We take any people of any age, as long as they're over 16, on any passage voyage. So we have young watch leaders like Ron Daswell, and we have old watch leaders like Darren, who's also captain. But we have the full spectrum of all ages on board. And when you come on board, it's more about the social inclusion than anything else. Because when you've got your little 17-year-old boy from inner London sitting with the ex-75-year-old army officer for dinner, there's a lot of things that happen there which doesn't typically happen on other sail training voyages. So we're all about social inclusion as well as sail training. We've been in existence since 1978, and Lord Nelson was launched in 1986. Lord Nelson was designed by Colin Moody, who designed a lot of other very famous sail training ships, and she was built specifically to take disabled people to sea. Tenacious was launched at the beginning of 2000, and they have both, Lord Nelson's been around the world once, and Tenacious is currently on her way around the world, right now being based in Australia. This means that we have a global reach, and that we don't just take British people sailing. We're based in Britain, but we do a whole lot more. We have been accredited by the United Nations, and we've got royal patronage. So this is the rough timeline of where we came from 1978. The ships were built by, as I say, Colin Moody, and I can't remember who built Tenacious, but I'll let Darren just tell you a bit more about the ship just now.
Hello, folks. So, there may be a couple of hecklers in the audience. You know who you are. And any grief from you, I'm going to call security. Is that all right? So, hello, folks. Can you all hear me? Yes. Yeah, lovely. Tenacious. Tony Castro designed Tenacious there, and you can see the difference in the shapes of the vessels there. But both very, very similar in terms of layout. Just quickly run through some of the stuff that's on board. Really, the first obvious one are the lifts to all decks, which is quite useful if you're in a wheelchair. So there's no part of the ship which is not accessible to everybody. The engine room, maybe wheelchair users can't get down into the engine room generally, but if they desperately want to go and have a look, then we'll make it happen. But generally speaking, they can get to every single part of the ship, and these chairs facilitate that. The heads, the toilets, again, big spaces. Things like doors, the size of the doors, for instance, it sounds fairly obvious, but they're slightly bigger, so you can get wheelchair users in and out. The bowsprit, if I just go back to you can see that the bowsprit on Lord Nelson is slightly different shape to Tenacious is there. She's quite wide, so you can get wheelchair users out onto the end of it. And on Tenacious, you can just see the little ramps there, just at the end of the bowsprit there. So again, you can get wheelchair users out to the end of the bowsprit there. So you can imagine there that everyone gets the experience of enjoying a ship from that particular end of the ship, particularly when she's hammering along under sail there. Yeah, we've got specially allocated wheelchair berths. Again, they're just a bit wider. The bunks are wider. We've got these fantastic portable lifts. In fact, you can see a picture of one just there, which are fantastic. So getting in and out of the bunks isn't a problem. Wheelchairs, we can get wheelchair users aloft, and you can see a picture of that lass who seems to be enjoying it. I've actually sat in a wheelchair myself and been hoisted up, and I have to say I didn't enjoy the experience really. It's quite challenging to do that, to put yourself at the mercy, if you like. Maybe that's not the right word, of other people. Trust, yeah. So it's quite a challenge, that, and but it's something that we always do. Assisted climbing, we make sure that everybody who can't climb without assistance, and if they want to go aloft, we make sure that happens. It's a vital, in such a huge, important part of the voyage, that one. Adjustable tables, again, you can lift them, move them, and adjust them to suit various shapes of people, really. These little unwind straps there, we have these little cleats on the deck, so if it's a bit roly-poly, we can secure wheelchair users down, but we try and avoid doing that because they don't particularly enjoy it. They'd rather have that freedom of movement rather than being lashed in a corner. Sometimes we might have to do it depending on the conditions, but again, no, those are available if we need to use them. For people with visual impairments, we've got Braille on all the major IMO signs. They've also got Braille on them. and we've got a speaking compass there, which is really annoying. It's switched on. It really is annoying, but we find actually people with visual impairments steer a lot better than sighted people. Why that is, I don't know. Maybe Robbie can tell me a bit more about that. But we find that that they can steer a more accurate course than sighted people can. Maybe they're tuned in a different way. I'm not entirely sure, but it is great. So having all these features, it means that we can include everybody in all aspects of the operations of the ship. What we don't have are a group of wheelchair users or people with disabilities in a corner. Okay, you guys just sit there and have a nice cup of tea, and we'll go off and do all the sailing bit. Now, that doesn't work. Doesn't happen that way. We include everybody, which is the key to what we do, really. One little thing that it's a bit naughty, really, but it is quite fun when we have a pilot come on board, say, to take us into a port, and we hand over the con to the pilot. We'll sometimes stick a blind person on the wheel, and then drop that little fact to the pilot saying, this is your hail pilot, welcome, blah, 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 this is your helmsman. And they can't see. And there's a sort of double take from the pilot there. And the jaw tends to drop away until they realise that the person who has this fairly serious disability can steer just as well as anyone who's sighted. So that's what we really like doing as a good wind-up. And I'm going to hand back over to Robbie.
Yeah. So there's some statistics up here about who have taken sailing. I won't go through them all, but there is a wide range, anywhere from people who have been born with impairments, people who have developed impairments, and injured servicemen. So, as I said at the very start, what we do is we take people to discover themselves and also to discover other people. So that's what the Jubilee Sailing Trust do. This session isn't supposed to be a sales mechanism for us to go, look at what we do, we're brilliant. What today is about is to learn from each other and show that with actually quite minimum effort, sail training can be made to be accessible to anyone and everyone. So here are some statistics from, I must apologise, it's very limited to UK organisations because they are the organisations that I had access to. But this does go on all over the world. So we have Ocean Youth Trust South, who've taken 110 disabled people sailing. Now, I put self-identifying here, and we'll come back to that shortly, but that is very important because it's how you classify a disabled person. We have Discovery Sailing Project, who've taken 25 to 30, and they actually had funding to do a special programme, which we see here, Discover, where they got funding to adapt Discovery, she's an ex-Clipper yacht, to deal with deaf people. So they had vibrating mattresses on board in case of fire alarms, they had hearing loops, and they have just fully adapted ships to allow them to go sailing. We have OIT Scotland, who've taken 65 sail people over 3 years. That's blind and deaf. And we have Challenge Wales, who had a big lottery funded project, again, to fully adapt the ship. They've got a talking Bluetooth compass on board, they have got braille signage, and they've got talking charts, which is very interesting. I assume it just goes danger, danger. So this is what other people have done. It's very not restricted to what we do. The JST has a very special model of what we can do, but there are other people out there. And with that in mind, I just want to go around the room and ask, are there people in here who have taken disabled people sailing? Have you run disabled voyages? Or if you're host ports, what do you do to make your ports accessible and appeal to disabled people? So, I won't see your hand, there's no point putting it up, just shout out. Has anyone done anything?
Yeah. I have.
Oh.
What?
I have.
What have you done?
We took a sailing with deaf and blind youth out on a normal ship, and we had some interpreters with us, and they climbed the rigging, they did everything, even though they couldn't see, couldn't hear.
How did it go?
It went really well. I've never had a group of trainees get that engaged in sail training ever before.
I've got to say, going on from that, when I was talking about Discovery, the ones who've done the See Here Discover project, I was talking to the skipper Clive, And he actually said that having someone who can lip read on the bow is invaluable. You know? Because
Sometimes dangerous though, eh?
yes. But he said, when you're sailing through a force 9 with waves coming over, you don't want to be shouting. So if you've got a lip reader, it is invaluable. Is anyone else in the room?
Yes, Tony, yeah.
Yes, on Spirit of New Zealand, and from over 20 years, and funded by the a Lions group in New Zealand, we do a 5-day trip with disabled youth. The program is they put in a youth buddy alongside them, and it is a voyage of 5 days. And as I say, that has been going on for over 20 years. And this year, and I am not sure as to whether it was a special charter or where the inspiration came for it, we also did another 5 days with a totally deaf group, and I believe they sailed without buddies. We've also in 205 had Jolt Journey of a Lifetime come out from England and do a 3-day one. That one really tickled my fancy because instead of having a buddy system to assist them, the lady organising it actually teamed up the disabilities so that she would put a blind person with a person in a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. So one told the other one where to go and so forth. And it actually, I saw it as being very empowering because it put the people that we in the room would perceive as having a disadvantage actually in a power position of actually being able to provide rather than receive. And that's a pretty smart place to be.
Tony, can I ask, did you have any extra equipment on board, or did you have to do any modifications or anything like that, or you just managed to adapt?
We basically worked with what we had. Right. The only real sort of modification, because we didn't have your lifts and that. The group had been travelling all the way from England and doing other activities. They had sort of a 4 and 6 handled sling that they could put under their wheelies for getting them up and down stairs and that. But getting them aloft, we rigged up a bosun's chair and used one of the capstans there and had their participants going around the capstan pulling their buddies up.
Anyone else?
From Italy, Sail Training Association Italy has a ship which is called, an ex-Dutch ship which is called Nave Italia, who is working exactly for these people, only for these people. Now, it's part of our Sail Training International, Italy, but they are very independent. So don't ask me too many things that I am absolutely unable to tell you what. But I know that when we try to have the ship for other purposes, it's always a no, because they're always working for these people. Yeah. Oh, this is Nave Italia, and she's based in Genova.
All right.
She's an ex. She's something. She was a Dutch. Swan something.
Swan from Mack.
Yes, from Mack. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's cool.
We transformed it, and now she's working just for this people.
Yeah, it's very fast. Sorry, sir.
I was sailing on Lutgedida, the Dutch barge for handicapped people. So.
Okay, and similar sort of equipment on board, yeah.
Similar sort, but the thing was we took them everywhere. If it when there was a pub on the first floor, we carried everything up and we don't give a damn.
Good point.
I've got to say, if anyone's ever been to a pub called the Frog and Frigate in Southampton, it's famed for dancing on tables. And they always get very worried when the JST comes in, because they know there's going to be a wheelchair up there at some point.
Yeah, we also went with the handicapped people in the wheelchairs, getting them on the dance floor. We don't give a damn. We do everything with them.
Yes.
And I also take on my ship now, I take handicapped people, and I don't have. I got a lot of space on deck, so
I think
it's no problem to drive around with a wheelchair on the deck. And we have to carry them down the stairs to get them into the bunks. But
I think you're right. Sorry, I forgot your name.
Martin.
Yeah, Martin. The point you're making there, that I know that the Tenacious and Lord Nelson have specifically designed with lifts and all sorts of innovations, but you don't necessarily need a whole raft of equipment or build a ship from scratch. You know, there's other ways.
I know
ways of
a
adapting.
lot of handicapped people who are sitting in a wheelchair. They just don't want it, you know. They don't want to be special. Just don't give a damn. And they're hopping around with their hands and they're going over and they're catching the wheelchair, pulling it over, and they don't give a damn. They're just doing it.
I think it's probably worth pointing out at this point that although the ships we have are adapted, there've actually been some of the adaptations have been taken out, haven't they, Darren? So when we built them, we actually overthought things. Do you want to give an example?
Yes, well, when Lord Nelson was built, she had railway tracks down the deck. So the idea being that you sort of slotted the wheelchair into these railway tracks, and then they happily went backwards and forwards like a train. It sounds crazy, doesn't it? But this is the thinking. Oh, we must make it as easy as possible for these people in wheelchairs. So we'll put tram lines down, and then tram lines up the foremast. So the idea was that you put your wheelchair against these tram lines and you hoisted them up the mat, and all this sort of stuff. Well, as you said, it was as Robbie mentioned, it was overthought. You didn't need this kit. You just get them on board and make a little bit more room, and for people who are blind or visually impaired, you have a strip down the middle of the deck that they can feel with their feet, so they've got some idea where they are, and various things like this. But a lot of the equipment was removed. They even had a landing craft called Little Emma. Do you remember that, Ron? Little Emma on there was this huge landing craft, and the idea was that you got this landing craft, with the ramp and everything, and you got those people in the landing craft, and then you sort of got them in, and you did a D-Day type thing on the beach and dropped the ramp down and off you went, But this equipment we found that it wasn't necessary. We just reduced that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But you're absolutely right. Yeah.
What we also found is that although the train track for the wheelchairs wasn't useful for wheelchairs, it was actually useful for the blind people because they could then track the way around. So no one thought of that. Yeah. So as you can tell, I wouldn't say sailing with disabled people is easy. No. Sailing with anyone is never easy, but you shouldn't be scared of doing it because you actually don't have to do that much adapting to your vessel to make it happen. So what is accessible sail training? Just out of interest, who in the room thinks that accessible sail training would be making everyone equal on board? Is that a fair statement to make? Every single person, every trainee on board is equal, yes or no?
No.
No. The answer is no, because they're not equal. Because you are disabled, there's no point in avoiding that. You have a disability, you have an impairment. You will not be completely equal. So equality is not about equity. Equality is being treated the same and being able to have the ability to perform the same as everyone else. It's a very distinctive thing to make. You must make that distinction. Equality is not about giving everyone the exact same thing. It's about giving everyone the exact same chance. And people need help with getting those chances. So by adapting your vessel, you're giving them that help. But it's not about adapting the vessel, it's about adapting the attitude. So if you've got a blind person, if you expect them to climb a mast the same speed as everyone else, that isn't equality. That's actually discriminating. But if you give them extra time to climb that mast, they're still being given the same opportunity. So equality is about opportunity. That's all it is. So let's get that out of the way first. You do not have to treat everyone exactly the same on board the ship. And if you have a disability, you will need that extra help. And that is an important thing to note. So, does sail training have to be about personal development? That's the other thing. Or is it about social inclusion? The people who come on board our ships who actually go away having got the most out of it are the non-disabled people. Because they've been given the chance to work with people in wheelchairs and been given the chance to go and have a drink ashore with the blind people. It's about giving the two societies together. And sail training is, of course, about personal development, but it's also about bringing people together to learn from each other. And that is why I think that the Jubilee Sailing Trust is first and foremost a social inclusion charity that does sail training. So this comes down to how do we view disability? There are two distinct modes of looking at disability. There's a medical model of disability and the social model of disability. Now, we're going to look at what these are in 2 minutes, but I'm going to tell you now that I believe everyone in this room subscribes to one of them. So the medical model of disability looks at a person's impairment. Medical model looks at a person's impairment first and focuses on the impairment as a cause of disabled people being unable to access goods and services or being able to participate fully in society because of the person's disability. They cannot do something. The social model of disability, it was created by disabled people. So that's the first thing to know. The medical model was created by doctors, by nurses, by government to go in and look at how people are classified. So they've created with disabilities, and it looks at the barriers erected by society in terms of disabled people being able to participate fully in day-to-day life. So this looks and goes, in practice, here is what they are. The medical model says they can't read that because they're blind, or they can't get in the building because they can't climb the steps. Whereas the social model goes, they can't read that because the text isn't big enough. And it also goes, they can't get in the building because there's no accessible entrance. It's a very important thing to note that disability should be about the barriers that are placed on people. People are not disabled, it's society that disables them. And that is what, when you go on board a ship, it's a whole different society. The ship is a microcosm. You go in and you're there for the next 5, 6, 7 days. It's not the same as general society, and we all know that. So I fully support that the social model is what we all do, because we all adapt things. That's what sail trainers do. They adapt situations to help each other and to perform better. Now, I mentioned earlier about being self-identifying disabled. Typically, people who are disabled were classified as such because they had a traditional disability. So they were in a wheelchair, they were blind, they were deaf. They were disabled because they were told they were disabled. But the social model goes on what we call self-identifying disabled people. So if there is a barrier placed upon you by society, then you could consider yourself disabled. So this could be dyslexia, dyspraxia, those sort of hidden disabilities can be counted as it. Now this is a very brief overview of what the social model is. But social model is sail training is the social model. I've got more information sheets here if you'd like to see them that compares the two models and shows you how on board the ships we do obey that. But that is the most important thing. The JST are a social model organisation, and I would encourage everyone else to be one as well. Considerations of an accessible voyage. You want to take this? Done?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest, I think I'll start really with the day-to-day operation of the ships, or no different to the way I'm sure we all run our vessels. There's no particular difference there, really. I mean, communication is the same with everybody, isn't it? You need to communicate what the plan is. You need to keep feeding that information. I'm not suggesting you bombard them every 5 minutes or anything like that, but communication is important, particularly if you have somebody who may be deaf, for instance. So we have hearing loops and things like that. And sometimes if I'm talking to everybody, I have the chart and I'm sort of stood here and I've got a chart and I say, can you see this? And we're going to go here. And many of the people obviously can't do that. So it's one of those things that you have to sort of just think about. And I'm sure you've come across that yourself there, really. The buddy system works really well. Effectively, if somebody needs assistance to use a bathroom, say, they need to come with known carers for obvious reasons. But otherwise, you may have a fully independent person who has a disability that can look after themselves particularly well, but then we'll provide a buddy from amongst the able-bodied crew. Now, that may cause, or you might think that may cause the odd issue, this person doesn't know that person, etc., but it works really well, actually. And it's not the sort of buddy looking after the poor disabled person in the chair. It works. It's a two-way street. That it really works well on both ways, and they really learn from each other. And that's what that system works very well. I think buddy system works on other vessels as well, doesn't it? You know, you have the mentors, and this sort of system of looking out for each other works very well. Watch structures are the same, really. We have a 4-watch system, but we try and include everybody in everything. You may think that, well, if you're blind, you can't be a lookout, but then we'll put somebody with them who can assist and point things out. So everyone has a job to do, and we try and get everyone included in that, including steering. And you know, if somebody's maybe not able to haul on a halyard or something like that, there's certainly something they can ease away. So there's always something for them to get fully involved with. I'm going to argue with this timings as we've never run a tall ships race. Well, we've come reasonably close, but so I think that's a bit wrong, that one. But we certainly haven't run it, I don't think. I think they're at sometimes if you have to, you can't sometimes throw a quick tack in with our ships because you need to get people in position. But even with crews, with able-bodied crews, that sometimes is the same way, isn't it? It doesn't always happen that quickly. And as Ron mentioned earlier on there, when we were racing both ships together, and we were sailing them hard, you know, we really were. We were thrashing them, and we had a mixed ability crew who, you know, you didn't notice any diff. You didn't notice that the people in wheelchairs and assorted other bits and pieces. You just didn't notice that. They were just, and that's beauty of all these ships that involve people with disabilities. You just don't notice the disability. You notice the people rather than that. So maybe one day we'll win a tall ships race. Maybe we'll have to get you involved in it again, Ron, and just slip you a few.
You have
quid,
won
maybe.
the friendship trophy, which was the best
that's
prize.
Right. That's right. Of course we have. Yeah.
Across the Tasman, you were going on a 4-hour watch. You were going mile for mile with us.
Yeah.
Till you broke some gear.
That's right. Yeah. Again, a daily structure is the same as ever. You'd recognise it really. The same as any other vessel. You know, we have a happy hour. Everyone gets involved in cleaning, and there's the watch systems I mentioned. We have we call it a smoker. We have a morning coffee break with cakes and an afternoon coffee break, and we have everybody's involved in preparing food. You know, so you can get the wheelchair users into the galley and mess areas so they can do all the prep and all that sort of stuff. And there's really nothing really, to be honest, that you can exclude them from. You know, the watch leader is hugely important with us. They really are the sort of linchpin, I suppose, of the voyage. They do make the voyage in a lot of ways. And we have a fantastic pool of watch leaders who've done a trip and they come back regularly. I'm sure the vessels have the same sort of thing, you know, regular volunteers. But the watch leader is, there's lots of herding of cats, making sure that people are in the right place at the right time. But again, that's no different for any other vessel, is it? But particularly the watch leader needs to, I wouldn't say be slightly more vigilant. That's probably not correct. But we do rely a lot on our watch leaders, you know, and I wouldn't say it's a holiday in any way, shape or form. So we do work them pretty hard there. But to be honest, it's not really any different. I mean, this is a point we're sort of making, really. You know, we have specialist equipment, but the daily routines and the things that happen on board aren't really any different from any other ship, to be honest. Yeah, vessel. Keep it simple, as we mentioned early on there. You know, get rid of all the superfluous rubbish you just don't need. Get rid of it all. You know, getting people into the boats. You have a little davit, you have a purchase, you have a little strap. You just pick them up, over you go. No problem. We don't need anything else than that. Bolts in the handrails on the port side. Under the handrails, there's 2 little bolts there, so people who are blind or have visual impairment know what side of the ship they're on. The little boat shapes as well, with a pointed end and a flat end, so you know which way they're facing. One thing I will say though is again, Robbie's probably the better one to mention this, but people who are blind build up incredibly quickly. They build up a mental picture of their environment. I don't know if everyone has noticed that, maybe when you had your crew on, but they incredibly quickly they build up this mental picture and start finding a way around. How they do it, I don't know, but little things like that, small little bits of metal make such a big difference for that. High contrasting colours again, so it's just easier for people with a visual impairment to pick up. And we've mentioned talking compasses. Now the ascender machines, they're excellent. People who are able to hoist themselves aloft, and they can do that if they want to. If they want to give it a shot, and then need a bit of assistance, again we can do that. It's really down to the individual to see. It depends on that individual there. If we've had people without any legs climbing aloft, just using stumps and things like this with a line on them. So there really is. I mean, the sky is literally the limit. It's down to the individual, really, as long as it's done safely that we do. Martin, again, you go ashore and you land on a beach, you just hoik them out and off you go. There's a way of. There's no need to mollycoddle them or anything like that. There's we can't land you on this beach because it's a bit sandy there. No, get on with it, crack on with it. But the adaptations we've got on board just make life a little bit easier. Right, Robbie, I think that's you.
Is this answer?
Group discussion.
Yes. So that's really all we've got to say. Basically, it's not hard to do what we do. We have specially adapted vessels which, yes, we can take wheelchair sailing. But I would argue that everyone else in this room can do almost as much as we do, if you just think about things different. So I want to take 5 minutes and just try and go, maybe split into groups, talk to the person next to you, whatever you want to do. But try and look at these questions. What are sail training's limitations for disabled people? What benefits does sail training offer having disabled people on board? And is there a correct way of doing things? It's just to make you look differently at what you do and whether or not what we do actually works. So we'll take 5 minutes to do that and then we'll come back and have a quick discussion. Feel free to talk and split into groups.
Crosses for the street, shops and buildings and all that. On board vessels, wise and kitchens just as well as any other deckhand that are doing so you would teach it and you'd read it.
I have no idea. I'm embarrassed to say.
I think it's metal. I really like and it was actually really fun
we've got to put you
as far as like the age find a way to take around. So, I mean, Robbie and I both started. Then eventually I became vice chairman. Chairman, I was vice chairman.
Can we just start finishing the conversations and come back round? It'd be wonderful.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all about.
It's only winding up.
One of his carers. But he knew.
Pushing your buttons.
Okay, everyone, if we can come back.
Absolutely.
No, face this way.
Yes.
Time for the Robbie and Darren show again. Welcome back.
I'm a not very glamorous assistant, I'm afraid, so I'm sorry about that.
Can we have a theme tune? Would it be the Muppets? Anyway, so I just want to go around the room and just have a quick discussion about these issues. So the first one would be, what are sail training's limitations to disabled people? Just shout out. I'm not going to look for hands.
In the mind.
What, sorry?
In the mind.
So how you think about disabled people?
I
Yeah.
think that's the main problem.
Yeah.
Or
Yep.
the main limitation.
I completely agree. This goes back to my point about the social model and the medical model. It's how the crew on board think about disability and how they view disability as being a barrier. So that is probably actually the biggest limitation of the limitation. Yes, probably the sail training's biggest limitation is a mindset. So yes, completely right. Anyone else?
Safety.
Safety.
Well, it will come down to, because Georgie just said something that I realised, because we were sailing with people who were completely deaf
Yes.
and had severe visual impairments. And afterwards, now I realised I have no idea how we would have communicated with them if there was a fire, for example, how we would have gotten them out.
Yes.
No problem.
So
But the thing is, this is 3 years ago.
yeah, no,
I should have thought about that before we started sailing,
Yeah.
not 3 years later.
Yeah. I completely agree. And safety is, so the JST, we are, well, I think we're probably one of the safest organisations in the world, aren't we? Because of what we do.
Well, we've had to think about exactly your point there about someone who's deaf is they can't hear an alarm, so then you have a vibrating pad and flashing lights, and there are ways around it. But you're absolutely right when you say these things have to be thought about. Yeah, it's not just something that you can just go without thinking about.
Yeah.
But yes, things like that. But there are always ways around that. But you're dead right. Safety. I mean the MCA definition of a Maritime Coast Guard Agency in the UK, the definition of a trainee is somebody who can work to the best of their ability. So that really covers people with a disability, of course, you know. But we do slightly worry about the future, particularly with the MCA, that there are issues with lookouts, for instance. Are our trainees, are they qualified lookouts? And there's all sorts of I think there's, as we all know now, in this day and age, there people are more risk averse. You know, it's a more awkward place to operate our ships in now, and we do have to make sure that we are prepared to adapt and change a little bit maybe for that. But it is a little bit worrying when when more and more regulation is brought into our operation, how we can respond to that. But it's important.
Can I make a comment on that? Because it's interesting that the MCA now, because we've got to have on board qualified lookouts, and so they're asking the watch leaders if they will qualify as a lookout. And if you can qualify as a lookout, that helps the system that we've got so many qualified lookouts. And I went to qualify as a lookout, and I had to do a hearing test. And I'm a bit mutt and Jeff, I'm a bit deaf. And when I did this hearing test on the computer, which you do first of all, it told me that I was, I'd had tone deafness in my left ear. And unless I got a hearing aid, I couldn't be a lookout. 20/20 vision, but, I need a hearing aid to be a lookout. That seems a bit loony to me.
Yeah, it does. I think the UK administration are maybe getting their knickers in a twist a little bit about various things. But unfortunately, it's this legislation and regulation is increasing. And you could argue, of course, it needs to change. It needs to adapt, and we need to make things safer. But it also makes life for us, particularly for us, a lot more difficult. So.
I've got to say, I'm quite thankful that the Jubilee Sailing Trust was started in 1978. I think if you tried to do it now, they'd call you. They would probably section you.
Yeah.
Crazy ideas.
But it's interesting, of course, that those regulations that the MCA are putting out are regulations that have come in from Europe. So if Britain goes out of Europe, or
let's not start that debate. Anyone else? Can anyone else think of any limitations?
I was just going to ask about medical care, because sometimes one of the advantages of sailing with JST and sailing with them and being part of the permanent crew is you do always have that backup of a qualified nurse and a doctor on board.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes I just think, from that side of things, other ships, the medical care is something you've got to consider.
Yeah, for sure.
No, definitely.
It certainly makes you sleep a lot better at night knowing that there is that medical backup on board. For sure, absolutely.
Excellent. So, next one. What benefits does sail training offer having disabled people involved? Anyone?
Huge.
Probably more beneficial for the what we would call the non-disabled. It actually wakes them up.
Yeah, I'd agree. Someone said mindset. Yes. In
sail training, everyone is welcome in a way that you can't always find other places.
Yes. So one of the limitations is mindset, but also one of the advantages is it can change mindset. Completely right. Anyone else?
This is probably from organizational side that it's easy to sell the story. That's
Yeah.
It certainly is, yeah.
And well, people pay more attention to the girl in the wheelchair up in the mast and to the guys just sailing on the boat.
Yeah, I agree.
But what's interesting about that though is we still have people in the UK and elsewhere, but they'll be sat alongside when the ship's in their wheelchair looking at this and thinking, wow, that must be amazing to sail on that. I wish I could do it. You do that, and well, you can. And there's still many people that aren't aware of in fact, you could say that about sail training in a lot of ways. Yes. There's still many people who aren't aware that they can do this amazing and have this amazing experience and adventure. Yeah.
Excellent. Last one.
Sorry, Martin had a...
Yeah, which is I've got a group of blind people who are sailing on Regina Mars, and the funny thing is, they're always talking about they're gonna look here and they're gonna have a look there, and at first I have to get used to that, but they're looking everywhere.
One of the eternal things that Aoife just over there once said to me was, she goes on board Lord Nelson, she's a BM. And one of the blind guys goes, Aoife, you're looking good today.
Just say you're feeling good. That'll be
Exactly. That's how you get arrested.
In dead trouble if he tried Braille to check.
This is being filmed, let's not go there.
Can I just say one thing, right? Because most of us are permanent crews and owners here. I've got to say, as a member of permanent crew and being on the Jubilee sailing trips, it's also incredibly rewarding for you as well. One of the most special times I ever had in sail training was with JST, when we got a whole load of different disabilities up aloft in their various forms and types. And before I got up to the platform, they're all discussing themselves, their own ways of, it must have been hard for you, it must have been hard for you. I'll never forget one of the girls turned around to this blind chap and said, so you did well to get up this high. He said, it's all the same to me. And it was the most humbling a new thing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Always remember that.
No, it is. It's not for that. It's also for the. I'm fully supportive of the fact that I believe that the Jubilee Sailing Trust have the most dedicated and most impassioned sail trainers working on board their ships full time, because they have the right attitude. Every single member of the permanent crew who I've sailed with, and that's quite a lot of them, are there because they believe in what they do. And that is the most important thing. If you take anything away from today, it's to know that the mindset of your crew makes or breaks a voyage. And if you don't have the right crew, it's never going to work. If you have the right crew but the wrong ship, that'll work every single time. That's the one thing to take away. It's got to be the mindset of the crew. And if you do that, if you have the right crew, the people on board, both disabled and non-disabled, will have the time of their lives. Last question. This is quite an easy one to answer. Is there a correct way of doing things?
Nah, just get the paint on.
It's all different. So that's really all I wanted to cover today. I've got a video to show at the end and a picture, but if anyone's got any questions,
yes,
and feel free.
I just discussed it. We are one of the host ports.
Yes.
We had Tenacious in our harbour. We had Lord Nelson. Do you have any suggestions for us as a port? If it's an idea to have some adaptations, I just realised we have a beautiful app. Well, not so very visible.
I don't necessarily think there's an adaptation required, but what is easier for us is that the gangway. How can we land the gangway? Are there minimum obstructions? Is it reasonably close to the town and things like that? But otherwise, not necessarily any huge adaptations required. Really,
I want to go back to this point. Keep it simple. That's the best thing you can do. I was talking about the gangway. I think it was Blythe, where everyone asked why was Lord Nelson parked the wrong way round, and it was because if we'd have parked the right way round, the gangway would have went onto some mud, and that's not good for wheelchairs. So it's just thinking differently about where you're going to place ships, and also if you can get some local disabled groups or accessibility groups or people on board who don't know that they can go sailing. That's the best thing you can do, because that then spreads the word that we are there. I often like to think that we are probably the UK's best kept secret, because no one really knows about us.
That's a good idea.
But we don't, we're not really any sort of crazy adaptations required yet. Sorry, is that?
No, I was just a comment from the city side. We made a mistake in 2003 when we arranged the crew parade through the old town, which is with a cobblestone. And it was just like a terrible cobblestone in one piece, and it was just people were carrying those people in their wheelchairs because you can't push them through. So that's just. This year we tried to arrange it in different routes.
I mean, that's fantastic that you consider that.
Yeah.
It's really, really helpful. And I mean, most of the crews will try and just bash on regardless, but that sort of thinking is really, really helpful to us. So thank you for that.
Also, blind people really struggle to count money, so if you can make the bar free, we wonder.
One more thing I think for Parliament or whatever, any port it goes for, that ask the organization to take contact with disabled organizations so they can come on board. Absolutely. And vice versa, so that you can promote trainee positions in the future for these people who are getting interested.
Absolutely.
So for example, for us in Riga, we were putting trainees on nations as well with disabilities.
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah.
So just interesting.
Have to get the word out for sure.
Yes, thanks for that. Any other questions?
There's just one point really, and that's about the only thing that I reckon where it's a bit different is in emergency procedures. If you have got a full quota of wheelchairs, in that getting people into their emergency stations in an emergency situation is a little different.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yes, it is, and it's always a little worry when you consider that we have a very good evacuation system, and we train very hard, and we have a good procedure for evacuating the ship. But thinking in reality, if you're having an emergency, it's going to be 2 o'clock in the morning and a gale and all the rest of it. If you're going to have a situation, it's going to be the worst situation you can think of. But yes, it is a worry from that point of view. But we have practiced and checked and regulated procedures that we think, and risk assessed procedures that we think that will it gives us the best opportunity to make the best of a situation like that. But yeah, if you have 8 wheelchair users on board, we have bits of string we attach a purchase, a pulley to, and we pull them out. I mean, it's simple as that. In reality, if you had to make that a quicker operation, you'd be dragging people out any way you could. With any farting around, you'd be getting them out any way you could. But there are definitely considerations, and I think partly the UK administration are a little bit nervous about that, what we do. We're taking people of mixed abilities away on a bouncy climbing frame, so it's something that they're probably not too happy with. But it's definitely a consideration. But really, there is a certain risk involved in anything we do, isn't there? And you just try and regulate and work against and set these procedures up accordingly, really.
Yeah, but a lot of handicapped people are not that handicapped when they're in the ward.
Yeah. I just want to go back to what you were saying about pulling people out if they had to, we just get them out.
Yeah.
That goes back to the whole political correctness thing. I've had a lot of questions about how do you refer to disabled people, and when you're on board our ships, we're probably the worst people for it, because we call people in wheelchairs, we call wheelies. People who are blind, we call blindies. It comes down to the person. Don't be afraid. If the person refers to themselves as blinded, don't be afraid to do it. It's people get too caught up on political correctness and are they a disabled person, do they have a disability, do they have an impairment? This is the one aspect where I disagree with the social model. The social model says that we are disabled people and we don't have disabilities, we have impairments. In my opinion, having been in SAIL training for the last 10 years, it's not about what you call them, it's about how you treat them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's what it comes down to. So please just talk to them, ask them, what do you refer to yourself as, and just do it that way. That's the easiest thing to do.
Sorry, Mark's.
Yeah, as far as I can remember, when I was involved, we didn't have any mental disabled person.
Yeah.
Is that due to the regulation or?
I was waiting for that question to appear, actually. As Robbie mentioned, the Jubilee Sound Trust was set up to take physically disabled people to sea. Now, people with serious mental conditions, mental health issues, then we can't do that for obvious reasons. If someone can't understand an instruction, particularly regarding safety, then if they don't understand what you're saying to them with regard to safety, then it's a bit of a difficult one. We do take people with learning disabilities, but what we do is we have a system where they come aboard, they look at the ship, they look at their environment they're going to be in, we meet them, they meet us, and we get a feel for how they'd react when they come on board, and if we think it's okay, then that's fine. But I think that mental health issues are more in the news these days, aren't they? There's more and more of a people with suffering from depression, or it seems to be a lot more. People are becoming more aware of that. So I think that what we're doing now is we're trying to evolve with that, and it used to be absolutely no. Now we have this assessment system in place to enable more people to come aboard. Yeah, we do our best to do that.
We're taking likes of Asperger's kids and that. Certainly amongst the crew, because we know they're medical, there'll be a quiet word amongst the crew that they will need much more supervision, especially if they're going aloft and things like that. We still accept, but we're a bit gun shy about epilepsy.
Yeah.
Once again, aloft.
Oh yeah, not aloft, yeah.
Because it's just, if it's going to go wrong, that's where it's going to go wrong.
Yeah. But I think you have to just evolve with that one and develop your procedures, and it's certainly not a blanket no, because that kind of goes against what we're all trying to do, really. But it can be a difficult one, though.
Yeah, we had once also with an epileptic person a really problem, because he was steering and then he was getting an attack and he wouldn't leave the wheel. And the problem was on the Lutgedina. Well, it's got another wheel in front of it. In that moment, he was steering at the. We want to steer. We couldn't steer because he
couldn't let go.
He didn't let go. Yeah, that was a problem.
Even with our able-bodied teenagers that we take to sea, and I'm seeing it more and more and more, that they bring their own chemist shop with them. you know, it's not uncommon to have, out of 40 trainees, 4 or 5 with EpiPens. And a bag of pills that at 68, I only carry half that.
Any other major questions? No. Excellent. Well, I want to thank you all for coming. I've got a video to show. But first of all, I just want to say, when you're dealing with disabled people, things are going to happen that you might not expect. You're going to see things that don't look what they are at first sight. For example, this. This is a blind guy who tried to use a paper guillotine. So you're going to see things that you won't expect. Laugh, because we will. All I can say from that is sail training is here to make the world a better place. At the end of the day, it might seem something that we want to do, we don't always do, but that's what it's here for. Disabled people make up 1/5 of the world's population. We need to take these people to sea, because 1/5 of the population is still marginalised. They're still out there feeling alone, and they're still made to feel like they're second-class citizens. That's not the world we should live in. If you can do anything to help disabled people develop and to have more self-confidence, just take them to sea.